Good morning. My name is Jeff Fraser, and very soon I will be joining your class to lead a seminar in comparative literature. We will be comparing two novels, each written by one of these two highly distinguished French authors who lived 2 centuries apart, Voltaire and Albert Camus. Voltaire was a major figure of the European Enlightenment, whereas Camus followed in the footsteps of the existentialist movement. Now, the title of the seminar is Ancient Wisdom and the Problem of Evil in Voltaire's Candide and Camus' The Plague, The Quest for a Life Well Lived. I wanted to present you this video in order to give you some background information. A PDF summary of this video will be made available to you for you to review prior to our meeting. Now, the first thing I need to do is unpack the title of the seminar. Let's begin with the problem of evil. What is it? The problem of evil has been around since humans first appeared on Earth. There are 2 aspects to the problem. First, why does evil exist? And second, how should one respond to it? For our purposes today, let's think about evil in the broadest sense, anything that causes human suffering. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, evil in this broad sense can be divided into 2 categories. First, there is moral evil, evil deeds committed by humans, things like murder, torture, and all the rest. Second, natural evils, things like hurricanes, fires, earthquakes, and plagues. Over the centuries, humans have frequently tried to explain evil in terms of their various religious beliefs. So, for example, natural evils might be viewed as punishment from God for the disobedience of the people. Unsatisfied with these explanations, some philosophers have questioned why God, if he is all-powerful and all-good, would allow evil to exist. In other words, why would he allow human suffering? In addition, the problem of evil has come up over and over again as a recurring theme in the world of literature. Hamlet, one of the greatest works ever in the English language, is an excellent example. How about ancient wisdom? Ancient wisdom in this case refers to 2 particular schools of philosophy founded in ancient Greece, Epicureanism and Stoicism. Both schools have had an enduring impact on Western culture, and we will come to see the influence of Epicureanism in one of the novels and the influence of Stoicism in the other. In both schools, the quest for a life well lived is the primary focus. The Greek word for this goal is eudaimonia, which comes from the Greek roots eu and daimonia. It literally means good spirit. It is similar to our word euphoria. Euphoria comes from the Greek roots eu and phoria, meaning good mood. Euphoria is a temporary state of well-being, whereas eudaimonia refers to a long-lasting state of well-being. To the ancient Greeks, eudaimonia had several connotations. It could mean happiness or well-being. It could mean human flourishing or living well. Many of the ancient Greek philosophers, including Plato and Aristotle, were very much interested in the concept, although they often differed in subtle ways on how to define it and how to achieve it. We will focus on Epicureanism and Stoicism because of their relevance to the 2 works that we are going to be discussing, not to mention their influence on 2,000 years of Western literature. They are particularly relevant to the theme in question here because the 2 schools stand out in directly addressing the biggest barrier to eudaimonia, namely the problem of evil and the ubiquity of human suffering. Here's an article I came across not long ago in the New York Times. It is an essay in the comparative literature genre. Why do evil and suffering exist? Religion has one answer, literature another. Ms. Mathis compares the works of 4 authors, 1 from the last century and 3 from this century. I mention this article only to provide evidence that the theme continues to motivate great literature and that evil and suffering are widely understood to go hand in hand. Epicurus said, "Happiness is man's greatest aim in life. Tranquility and rationality are the cornerstones of happiness." He taught that superstition and irrational thinking were the enemies of tranquility. Therefore, we must strive to conquer them through sober reasoning. It is sober reasoning, banishing those beliefs through which the greatest disturbances take possession of the soul, which produces a pleasant life. By beliefs, he is referring to superstitious beliefs, primarily the fear of punishment by the gods. These are the beliefs that disturb the soul the most. He taught that the gods did not intervene in human affairs, so there was no need to fear them. Death, therefore, the most awful of evils, is nothing to us, seeing that, when we are, death is not come, and when death is come, we are not. He argued that the fear of death is irrational, and overcoming the fear of death is one more step toward eudaimonia. 2 of Epicurus's fundamental principles in the quest for eudaimonia were very simple. Pleasure is good and pain is bad. Unfortunately, this formulation can lead to a gross misunderstanding if one does not dive deeper into Epicurus's philosophy. For one thing, Epicurus argued that not all pleasures are equally worthy of pursuit. Note that in this next quote, the prodigal refers to those who live in a recklessly wasteful, extravagant, or lavish fashion. When we say then that pleasure is the end and aim, we do not mean the pleasures of the prodigal or the pleasures of sensuality, as we are understood to do by some through ignorance, prejudice, or willful misrepresentation. By pleasure, we mean the absence of pain in the body and of trouble in the soul. It is not an unbroken succession of drinking bouts and of merrymaking, not sexual love, not the enjoyment of the fish and other delicacies of a luxurious table, which produce a pleasant life. Physical pleasures are short-lived and too often create a craving for more, according to Epicurus. The cravings can never be satisfied for very long. The state of craving is a state of suffering and a disturbance of tranquility. It is best to experience physical pleasures only in moderation, so as not to become dependent on them. Epicurus taught that spending time with good friends and pursuing intellectual growth are 2 of the highest forms of pleasure. So now we come to the Garden of Epicurus. In 306 BC, Epicurus moved to Athens and established a school known as the Garden. Unlike other philosophical schools of the time, the Garden emphasized community, friendship, and a simple, self-sufficient lifestyle. Epicurus wrote, "Self-sufficiency is the greatest of all wealth." In the 1700s, during the time of the European Enlightenment, there was a resurgence of interest in Epicureanism. This painting by an 18th century Hungarian artist imagines what the Garden of Epicurus might have looked like. Epicurus advised people to avoid unnecessary involvement in political struggles and public conflicts. He believed such activities often created anxiety and disturbed peace of mind. His garden was a place of tranquility where one could escape the turmoil of city life. In summary, Epicurus encouraged his students to focus on peace of mind, clear thinking, meaningful friendships, and simple pleasures. He viewed the pursuit of luxury, power, and fame as empty desires that can never be fully satisfied. The Stoic school was founded in the heart of Athens around 300 BC by Zeno of Citium, around the same time that Epicurus established his garden just outside of Athens. The school was named after the Greek stoa, where the students met with Zeno. A stoa was a long roofed colonnade which served as both a marketplace and a public meeting place. The writings of the early Greek Stoics survive only in fragments. Fortunately, centuries later, Stoicism found many followers in the Roman Empire, most notably the Roman senator Seneca, the Greek slave Epictetus, and the Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius. Their writings are our best sources for understanding Stoic philosophy. Like the Epicureans, the Stoics believed that eudaimonia was the ultimate goal of a human life. But instead of characterizing eudaimonia primarily as living a life free from pain and filled with pleasures of the most worthy kind, the Stoics viewed eudaimonia as a flourishing, well-lived life, a deep sense of well-being, and a life guided by reason. Notice that these characteristics of eudaimonia do not conflict with those of the Epicureans. However, note also that pleasure was not an essential feature. Instead, the Stoics argued that to achieve eudaimonia, only one thing was needed: virtue. The four cardinal virtues are wisdom. Reason, logic, and experience will guide the path towards eudaimonia. Virtue is rational. Understand what you can and cannot control. Wealth, health, and status are irrelevant. Justice. That is, a resolute commitment to duty and fairness toward one's community. By the way, the Stoics had a much broader view of community than the Epicureans did. Instead of thinking of the Garden of Epicurus, think of an entire nation. Temperance. The Stoics emphasized moderation and self-control of emotions. Finally, courage, meaning self-discipline to endure pain and hardship with composure while honoring your duties. Pain is unavoidable. It is to be accepted and endured without self-pity. A few quotes from those three famous Stoics I mentioned will help elucidate these principles. From the writings of Marcus Aurelius: reject your sense of injury and the injury itself disappears. Life is short. The fruit of this life is a good character and acts for the common good. No man can escape his fate. The only question is how best to live the time that he has to live. Stay calm and serene regardless of what life throws at you. Seneca on fear and suffering. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. I think he's saying that when we worry about the future in our imagination, we often focus excessively and irrationally on the worst of the possible outcomes. He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a man who is alive. A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. I think he's saying don't waste your time worrying about future events over which you have no control. In particular, death is in the future and cannot be avoided. To be anxious about it in the present creates unnecessary suffering. Epicurus, as you have heard, said something very similar. Here's Epictetus on control and perception, and on focus on internal reactions. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. Now, literary scholars have seen a link between this quote and a quote from Hamlet. Hamlet tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern that Denmark feels like a prison to him. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern disagree. Hamlet says, "Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." Epictetus taught, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." Also, authentic happiness is always independent of external conditions. Vigilantly practice polite indifference to that which we can't control. Your happiness can only be found within. Here are Epictetus's thoughts on action and character. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. I think he's saying that we fear failure because we feel that it would make us look stupid and foolish. But we can learn from our failures, and success is often or usually preceded by failure. Finally, on freedom and desire, Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Epicurus would agree. He taught, if you want to make a man happy, don't add to his riches, take away from his desires. And do not spoil what you have by desiring what you have not. So here's your assignment before we meet. First, review the PDF document that contains a summary of this video. At the end of that document, you will find a selection of quotes. Second, as you read the quotes, make a note of a few that you particularly like. Also, make a note of a few pairs of quotes that show things that Epicureans and Stoics disagree on, and a few pairs that show things that they agree on. Bring a printed copy of the quotes with you to the seminar. Third, be prepared to share a quote or two, along with your own personal thoughts, as appropriate, to add to our discussion when we meet.